Welcome back to the channel. I'm Peter Mokray, Dow Space DP and Gaffer, and in today's video, we're gonna fix this lighting. It is way too harsh, way too bright, and then if I put a hat on or something over my head, it's way too dark. How do we fix it? From going from this to this, that, whatever. Let's get into it. All right, so first thing I wanna do is I wanna grab a couple triple riser combos. So these are Matthews triple riser combos. We're outside and there's a chance we could get a little bit of wind. So we want to go big as possible with what's on the van. So these are nice and heavy to give us a good spread. So we're going with an 8x8 overhead setup. And the reason I want to do an 8x8 gives us a little wiggle room for our talent to move around so they're not so locked into a spot, and so we don't have to move it around as much. And I have a lot of diffusion options in 8x8, and we're gonna actually run through every single one of the diffusion options I have to see what the best fit is. So let's go ahead and get our frame. All right, I will set this frame down here. Oh, that's a pretty good guesstimate right there. Okay, so next I want to get some hardware. So I'm going to get some lollipops, and what lollipops are these bad boys right here. And what they do is they're a little bit bigger, quite a bit bigger than your regular gobo head, and that gives us the ability to attach our hardware to it, and it's nice and strong. So I'm going to tie that guy in right there. So I have it right here on my grip cart, and there's our hardware right there. So I like to tighten these down when I put them away, because otherwise they'll work their way out and then we end up losing them, and we don't want to do that. So I find the halfway point on this guy here, and then we match these guys up. There we go, and lock it in right here. Usually you'll have two people helping you set these guys up, which is ideal, because it gets a little tricky on your own. So these will connect real quick. Click it in here. And this is where having help would be beneficial. That slid on just fine. Make sure it reaches the end, and then here, I'll make sure to correct it, see if it has to go anywhere. Give a little bit of slack. So I want to show you how it slides on. That's sliding in. Get this end in real good. Always leave these guys loose so they could adjust. The stand can adjust. Nothing's too locked into place. That's the thing. And also there's a catch. If you notice the way these are designed here, they have the slot, and that slot catches aside. So if it goes down this way, it catches and it doesn't pop out. When we dive into the comparison, I want you to pay attention to a few things. First of all, look at the exposure on the key side of the subject versus the fill side of the subject, and see how the light is hitting them. Also, pay attention to the contrast ratios between the subject and the background. Some of the diffusion may darken up the subject a lot more. The background shouldn't change because we aren't changing any of the camera settings. We'll have the camera set to an ISO of 800 with a 180-degree shutter and an f2.8 on both lenses, on the A cam and on the B cam. So that should stay neutral. And then we have the ND set to the electronic ND on the FX6 at 1/108 for both cameras. So that should give us a baseline. We'll start with no diffusion on top and move through, but do pay attention to those differences, and also look at the talent's reaction to the amount of light that's coming in. Sometimes, like this one here, it's a little too bright and can be very difficult for the subject to be able to look forward without squinting and getting the sun in their eyes. All right, let's get into it. So this is our first setup. We have no diffusion overhead, nothing modifying the sun. We do have our frame built out, ready to go to add diffusion to it. We have 8 different types of diffusion that we will be trying out. We have quarter silk, art silk, quarter grid, half grid, full grid, unbleached muslin, magic cloth, and then finally highlight. For each setup, I will list out the diffusion used down at the bottom, as well as the lux and CCT reading that I got from my Sekonic 800 color meter. I am metering from the key side, which is the bright side.
Let's get into our first diffusion, and this is the quarter silk from Canvas Grip. Pay attention to how the diffusion makes a shadow on the concrete compared to just straight sunlight. Also, the shadow quality on the subject and the intensity of the light coming through from the sun compared to the subject and the background. I like to have some directionality from the sun, but I also like to have some great diffusion, and there's that sweet spot that I really prefer. Now, some people may like it to be a lot more diffused and a lot darker on the subject with the background having a certain exposure. It's all preference. For me, this looks too dark on the subject and it is too evenly diffused where you almost lose total directionality of the sunlight on the subject. Now for me, one of my go-to diffusions here in Texas to put overhead on a subject on a hot, bright, sunny day is the quarter silent grid from Canvas Grip. It is one of my go-to. You still get that directionality coming in and you get a nice soft look on the subject, and this is something that is really pleasing to the eye. Now what makes it silent versus non-silent is when the wind blows, you're not going to get a lot of noise coming off of it. It is very quiet compared to a regular grid cloth. Now, if it's still too much light on the subject, you could bump up to a half silent grid and that'll cut a little bit more light, and that may be the look that you're looking for. It's always a preference thing and it's always what you want. You could still see it have a little bit of direction coming in, and it may be a better match for your background because your background may be very bright, it may be very dark, and that's where you have to juggle between the two, or your subject's skin tones may be a lot brighter or a lot darker, and that does factor into what diffusion you use. And if you really want to stop it down and make it a lot darker and diffuse it a lot more, a full silent grid is a great choice for that. But just like with anything in our industry, it's good to have choices and selections depending on the situation you're in. You don't want to be locked into just having one diffusion and not having the option to change things out. So that's why I wanted to demonstrate what each one of these will do and how they react with the subject in this environment. Now we're going to go with an unbleached muslin, and this is very thick. It also changes the color temp quite a bit and warms it up on the subject. It is a lot darker, and you can tell my wife is very happy right now because she is not getting blasted by light into her eyes. So it's a lot more comfortable, but for me it is a bit too dark compared to the background, so it wouldn't be my first choice. So now something that we like to use often in our interview setups or indoors is the amazing Magic Cloth. Now Magic Cloth is great. It cuts down a ton of light, it softens everything up, and it has a great look. But for outdoors, it's just not a winner, and it is not commonly used. I mean, it could possibly be used as a bounce, but not necessarily to diffuse because it just is too much and it's not really looking natural like they're outside getting hit by the sun. Now what does look natural like you're getting hit by the sun is the highlight from Canvas Grip. This keeps the directionality of the sun, but it softens it up and you can tell what it's doing. You can see the direction, but the harsh shadows are cut, but it will be very hot and intense and feel just like they're out in the sun, or even worse because you kind of get a greenhouse effect from it sometimes. Let's take a look at an 8-way split between all the diffusions and what they do to our subject, and let's take a look at it with false color showing so you can see the direction of the light.
All right guys, so pro tip, if you really want to aggravate your wife that works with you full time, say you have to do a YouTube video that involves her staying outside all day long in the heat. It's a fun way of really spicing up your marriage.
Bonding.
We have an airplane overhead, we have roofers that way, and to round it all out, we do have lawn care guys over here. So we have the perfect outdoor situation. It doesn't get more real than this. So what did you think? What was your favorite diffusion overall to give you the best look and contrast ratio between the subject and the background? I want to know in the comments. And what is your go-to diffusion when you're having to shoot outdoors and diffuse light on talent? I know a lot of people like to grab a 5-in-1 and make it quick, but if you had a little more time to put up a 4x a 6x or even an 8x, what's your go-to diffusion? Let me know down in the comments again. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. I want to give a big shout out to my wife for standing in. Thank you for all your help in setting everything up as well. And as always, I'll see you on the next one, only if you subscribe to the channel and hit all those little like buttons and all that other stuff that YouTube wants you to do. Click this, that, whatever. Have a nice day. Bye.